on this week's Rated G podcast.
With my art, I think one of the reasons why the style is as bizarre as it may be is I also have this lovely thing called aphantasia, which definitely plays a part into the imagination side of things with story writing. I feel as if everyone has at least something that is a skill they're better at than other skills. And if you format your purpose or things that you enjoy doing around that skill, not only will it be easier, but it'll be more enjoyable so long as you enjoy that skill. Then we get the pragmatic because I run a company where I'm probably going to have somebody come through that wants to make prints out of AI stuff that they've made. So I'm going to have to confront this directly at some point.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to another special edition to the Rated G podcast. I'm your host, G. Derrado. For those of you who have been here before, welcome back and thank you for your continued support. And for those of you who are new here, welcome to the show. Here on the podcast, I like to sit down with fellow local artists, artisans, music writers, all types of creative entrepreneurs and small business owners. And we simply just sit down and have honest discussions and conversations involving all things art and creativity, as well as other aspects in life. So if you enjoy this type of content, please be sure to hit that follow, subscribe button, ring the notification bell. That way you can keep up with the current uploads. If you're only listening, definitely peep the YouTube channel in case you do want to see the visuals for the podcast, and also check out other content that I put on there. And be sure to also check out the show description. That's where I provide all of our social media information. So if you want to follow my guest or myself outside the podcast, you can find those links in the description below. And let's get right into it. I got a brand new guest for you. His first time being on the show, and I met him a little while back at one of the recent, well, not so recent anymore, but I talked about it on a previous podcast, I believe, and it was the Till Death Do Us Art, or Do We Art. And he seemed like a fascinating individual, and we honestly, if I can recollect correctly, that we really dived into the topic of mixed, MMA and UFC particularly. So I'm sure we'll be getting into that. But he is an artist. He also, I believe, co-owner of a printing company for fine arts. And so let's bring him right in. Please welcome for the first time my guest, Kody Goudie.
I appreciate the applause. Thank you for having me on.
Of course.
I didn't get any water, so my voice might sound terrible. So we're gonna figure it out.
All right. And we just go through the flow, and if we need any fancy editing, that's where I come in and do all that jazz. But how's your day been, brother?
It's been pretty good. A few different consultations. You're right. I do co-own a fine art printing company, and part of what we do is in consulting the artist directly to figure out what they want. So that's been the meat of my day. Okay. Going around talking to a few people about different things and getting some work ready.
Nice. Now you are an artist yourself as well. So how would you? Typically when I have a brand new guest, I like to just kind of dive into their backstory, their origin story, if you want to call it that, into the creative realm. So how was it that you got into art in the first place?
Yeah, so I mean, it depends on how far back you want to go. With my style, it's a little bit more recent. Literal art, I mean, as a kid, as like most of us start, it started in like 5th grade with tracing some of those big Yu-Gi-Oh templates for the playing card game, just putting the paper over top of it and outlining it, and I'd mess around with different artistic things like that for a number of years. But in like freshman year, around then, I found a YouTube channel called Peter Draws, which one of the bigger art channels now or something along those lines. And I fell in love with his style and tried emulating it to very, very little avail, as you could expect. And just developed it from there. I did pieces every now and again eventually started getting encouragement from some people near me that I respected as artists, which is always exciting. And then I eventually, by sheer coincidence, made something that I really liked, and then started investing in the materials to be able to make prints for myself, and went hard into the art scene. That was around 3 years ago, and I've been doing it ever since.
Okay, nice. Yeah, it's kind of funny how, I mean, I would say a common ground for many artists is like it all really just starts from you, like either tracing or just mimicking something that you
Oh yeah.
admire.
Mhm.
I mean, it was like in terms of like tracing art and stuff, that was kind of the same, similar with me as a kid. My oldest sibling is an artist, and I used to sneak in his room when I was like, I mean, the earliest I can remember drawing was like since 5 years old. And I remember around then, maybe even a little earlier, I would sneak into his room and go to his studio desk and just like trace his characters that he would draw, and it really just kind of sprung from there.
Mhm.
So, and and oftentimes, yeah, when we find an artist that we really do like, we try to just, yeah, kind
Yeah.
of emulate something similar to that until it turns into something of our own. So that being said, how'd you, or not how, but well, yeah, how would you describe your art?
So I like to call it colorful pseudo horror because I don't really have any other better word. I've often called it goop as well. I don't have the traditional art study or art practice background. I typically struggle making things that look real in any way. So like body designs, character formations, eyes, all of those types of things. There's little bits and pieces that I'm okay at, like very, very simple 3D geometry, some teeth, stuff like that. But the rest of it is like just making tubes and different lines and bubbles and stuff like that in ways that, I mean, for lack of a better term, coagulate in every sense of that word, and trying to piece together sort of like a little bit of a Giger-esque, a little bit of Bekzinski, pretty much just a mess of all the horror influences and ink artists that I've liked over the past however many years, and whatever my hands are able to replicate through viewing their work.
Would you, I don't know if I may have asked you this the first time we met, but would you put it under the category of abstract?
I don't think I could avoid it. I think it's kind of inevitable to put it in abstract when most of what I do is unrecognizable. So yeah, I'd say it fits there.
So, it's funny that you say that because like, I've gotten a look at some of your work even in person at that art show.
Mm-hmm.
And there are parts that are identifiable. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why I asked, like, because I don't know, like when it comes to me and understanding or just knowing what category of art is what, like it's like I'm bad at identifying things. So usually, like if it's like something very like very, like I kind of just throw abstract out pretty uh like liberal with liberty, because like if it doesn't have like an actual form or structure, that's when it becomes sort of abstract to me. But at least with yours, with your work, there is like there's stuff in there going on. It's just kind of like you said, it's like it's almost like blended, or you said
Mm-hmm.
coagulated, or like
Cesspit.
more. So there's still like, I don't know. So that's why I asked, like, you would you consider, because like there's a lot of like um what's the word I want to look use, like there's a lot of like I'm always drawn to a lot of line work and like details. So there's a lot of that in your work as far as like what is going on in here, but there's still, I don't know, like that's just me when I'm looking at your
Yeah.
work. Like there's still structures of things, even though they're like very odd shapes and whatnot. Whereas when I'm thinking abstract, I mean, I'm thinking like the most abstract shit you can think of,
Yeah.
even if it's just shapes and just layers. Because like I understand like there's often a lot of layers involved, which your work has. But then from again, just because I'm a type of artist that enjoys and admires line work, the line work is what really brings me towards your work. And then I start realizing, oh, there's a lot of like weird stuff going on in here. It's like
Yeah.
usually it'll take for me to like identify something in like a piece. And then when I start zooming out, I'm like, oh, there's there's a lot of things
Mhm.
going on here, which is really cool. So I'm just always generally fascinated by abstract and just like other art forms where you're really allowed to just free flow, you
Mhm.
know. So, but
That's how I treat it. Yeah.
yeah.
I've often tried to follow Bekzinski's idea of how to make abstract art, which is don't name it, don't say anything about it, don't discuss it, don't even talk to people about it, because the more you do any of that, the less legitimate the connection the individual will have to your art is.
Mm.
And I mean, there's some credit to that, but he also ironically has art that's almost exclusively influenced by World War II. So his level of abstract is quite loose in definition. But
Mm.
I understand his point, and he refused to name anything because he didn't want to have any sort of bridge between the creator and the audience when they were viewing it, so that they were forced to create that bridge for themselves, and everyone would come to their own conclusions. The problem with that is that if you don't name anything, you can't talk about his art in any way because he has hundreds upon hundreds of pieces. And just saying, like, yeah, that one with the tree. And then you have like 8 pieces you got to go through with that. And none of them have names. And all of them were released in similar years. So the conversation's confusing. It's like muddy territory.
Especially
So,
if they just title them Untitled One or
exactly.
Untitled Number such.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh man.
Mm-hmm. He didn't even do that. He just kept putting them out there. No, not even
Yeah.
untitled.
Oh
That,
geez, yeah,
mm-hmm.
it's like figuring out like a Da Vinci Code at that point. It's like, oh, what is this painting or what is it
Mm-hmm.
about? So,
Yeah. So I try to find the middle ground by giving like random names, but the rest of it is like I'd rather someone else tell me what my art's about than me describe it in any way, because I don't really assign it meaning to myself,
mm,
which by saying that ironically gives it a little bit of meaning to the people that are looking at it. But I guess it depends on how you view it. If you like the style of art that I have, then you're probably going to find more meaning in it than I do, because I like doing the style as opposed to figuring out the style.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes, yeah, usually like sometimes if I'm working on a personal project, for the most part, I'd like to have a narrative behind it. I do
Mm-hmm.
generally like to try to put out a message if there's one I'm wanting to put. Otherwise, if I'm just trying to put something together that's just maybe I just want it to be thought invoking or provoking in some way without any like real pinpoint, of like what are you saying here? Sometimes, yeah, kind of like what you're saying, like
Mm-hmm.
let the viewer kind of figure out what they're really
Mm-hmm.
seeing. But sometimes I do like to have something behind it in case they ask, like, so what's the thought behind this? Be like, because you never want to be like, oh, I just kind of, you know,
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, that's the part I struggle with. I like
yeah.
the story creation behind my art is the part that I don't necessarily enjoy.
Well,
It's the part that like every other artist I talk to is like, yeah, that's my favorite part. It's like creating this animated idea in the brain of the person who's looking at my work. And when I do it, I'm like, oh, I can't even imagine anything for it. I just did it because it felt cool.
mm,
And that's what a lot of it comes to. So it's kind of like my crutch to say the viewer should be the one interpreting it, and when the reality is I'm being a little bit more lazy and constructing the story myself. But at the same time, it's about what you enjoy, and if stories can be created in collaboration, they're typically going to be a lot better than stories created solo. So
yeah. And
it's a mixture.
I mean, I don't know if this would apply to like just general abstract artists, but I know for me and my experience with the work I'm putting out now, I mean, or some of the older stuff I put out, I look back at them and then I actually end up getting a more clear message out of the art, and I'd be like, oh, was I really trying to say
Mm-hmm.
this the whole time? Or there'll be more layers added to it. I'm like, just I'm thinking, oh, how was I, what was I feeling? How was I feeling? Like, what was the experience up until that point that got me there? Um, But that usually happens like after I've already completed the piece
Oh
and
yeah. Oh yeah.
back at it, I'm like, huh.
Mhm.
Yeah.
With my art, I think one of the reasons why the style is as bizarre as it may be is I also have this lovely thing called aphantasia, which definitely plays a part into the imagination side of things with story writing. Basically, I don't have any visual imagination. And that's all aphantasia is I see. I mean, the best way to describe it for people who don't have it is kind of like seeing in book form. I got words going around and I got numbers going around, but I don't got any pictures. And maybe some loose colors if I'm real lucky with some of the memories, but the rest of it is all data. And that's how I draw.
You're kind of like Chat GPT without, or you're like one of the, you're like a painting, AI painting app, but without the painting part. You're just filled with all of the search engine words, keywords, but you're still trying to figure out the visuals.
Hopefully, I'm less of a plagiarist, but
No, of course
I
not.
guess I'm close.
Your work has soul, AI does not. It has data.
Yes.
So, and then that's a topic that I often, oh, well, I shouldn't even say often. It's usually almost every time I have a guest on, I bring
Yeah.
up generative AI just because like it affects everybody, even like regardless you're an artist or not, because it's like hitting everything. It's hitting all the markets. So I'm just generally interested in like how people are anticipating it or just like gearing up for it, or if they're just like, nah, you know. But anyway, so you've been pursuing the arts for about 3 years, correct?
Yeah.
What you said before. Now, all of that here in Richmond?
So I live about an hour north of you in Fredericksburg. So most of it has all been there, but I've jumped to Richmond a few times, and then once or twice in Culpeper, like the 50-mile radius around, pretty much upper half of Virginia area.
Oh, okay. So you're pretty out there then.
Just a little bit.
So how'd you come across the Till Death Do We art?
The dude who runs it, which I always forget his name, but his Instagram handle, your favorite
Devin.
artist, yeah, Devin.
Shout out to Devin.
He did a lot of Instagram ads going around, and he uses similar hashtags to me, so he populated somewhere. I was like, ooh, that's interesting.
Okay.
And then you just use it to network. So I found him through his Instagram ad, got a part of it pretty quickly, and then participated in that event. From that event, I found you. From that event, I found Wildline Studio in Culpeper with a few people out of there that are super interesting. And now I'm bouncing around to a few other locations I found through them. So just the networking game.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I don't know if you if you feel like kind of talking about it, because I talked a little bit about it just by myself, but because our neighbor Blake, I've known them for a while, so we were just talking about it, and it seemed like the general consensus is that it was a great event for networking as opposed to really bringing in the shoppers. And perhaps maybe, I don't know if Devin had a sign or had like the preparation to inform possible attendees that like it's on the second floor or whatever. Because I mean, I hate to admit it and say it, but like stairs, they kind of matter.
Like, they do.
Yeah,
they kill movement.
And yeah, so I mean, it definitely, I mean, yeah, because I connected with a lot of people, of course, that were there, like yourself, and I kind of felt bad because I'm pretty sure majority, if not all, the money I made that day were from the fellow vendors, and I always feel bad about that. I mean, I think you bought a print, didn't you?
We got two. I got the little flower original, and then we got the big lady, which is sitting over here in a frame.
Yeah. So, well, thank you for your support. I always feel bad because I just haven't been in that position to be able to really shop for myself like that. But I always try to at least. If if not bringing them on the podcast, I try to like swing by the events that they're at, just show that support in that way.
And that's what's appreciated about it. Basically, I bought my ticket here, didn't I?
Well, no, honestly, when we were just talking, this was like before I think you, because I don't know if we spoke and then you went back to your table and did your thing and then came back and bought. But I mean,
we were shouting at each other about Chris Weidman by the very end of it. That was great.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, so when we had learned about your printing business, which we're gonna get into, but once learning about the business, and then I believe you're doing something for autism. Am I correct? So that kind of like was kind of, because I have two nephews that are on the spectrum, so of course I'm emotionally attached to that, and and that was the initial trigger. I'm like, oh, like that's awesome. Like, so, and I have family on the spectrum, so like I was like, that's when I was like, I gotta have you on so we can talk more about this and the Frog and Mantis business.
Yeah, it's interesting because pretty much every type of position I've gone into, work related, I've taken some form of ownership within the company, not to a literal like I got like a part of the company on my paycheck type thing, but I take personal ownership of the work that I do because I like being a good worker. So from like kitchen positions that I've been in to swim instruction to now working in ABA therapy with severely autistic children, I really enjoy being good at things that I do and learning the fundamentals of everything that I can practice so I can continue to develop it moving forward. And ABA therapy is a fascinating thing because it's one of those things where the pitch that you have going into it is that the idea of ABA therapy in a nutshell is to be so effective at helping severely autistic children that eventually they'll be able to operate as effectively on their own as you reasonably can with that severe autism. And the curiosity behind it is the fact that while that's the pitch, the field is growing so massively dramatically because autism is also statistically increasing by a massive, massive number over year after year after year. I think last I looked into the statistics, it went from 1 in every 54 children in 2020 to now this year being 1 in every 36. So the statistical leaps of autism's prevalence in childhood is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And working in a field that you can directly impact it is, I mean, inherently fulfilling if the days are occasionally tiring. I mean, I change diapers pretty much. So that's a big chunk of it. So that's the day-to-day is not as interesting as the grand scheme type of ideal, but I mean, that's most work, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's called AVA or ABA?
B as in boy.
Okay.
Applied Behavioral Analysis.
Okay. Okay. And now how does that tie in with Frog and Mantis? Or I mean,
doesn't at all.
Then so let's switch to Frog and Mantis. How did that start?
So when I first started doing or wanted to start selling my art, I went through a few online print shops just to figure out what I wanted to do. And I did a few tester prints, all of which I still keep because I'm petty. And they were trash, to be quite frank. I paid for like 3 from each of them. I didn't pay less than $30 for any of those bundles. And I not only got poor prints in return, but some of them had blown my art up. Some of the sizes were weird. The way that they shipped the prints was in a rolled tube because it's cheaper for manufacturing. So the prints themselves were rolled over. And the quality was just not great, especially for the price. So I started looking into printing options. And thankfully, the art community is really good about just talking to each other. So I ended up messaging a huge artist out of Seattle named Slop Jockey. And he's like unbelievably big. He's got like almost 500,000 followers on Instagram just doing this for the last few years. And somehow he found the time to just get back to me when I asked him about printers. And he gave me the specs, the printer that he had specifically, and then how he ran his business, which I think Etsy, he has like 9,800 sales or something like that over the last decade. So this is his living. So I just modeled what I started doing off of that. I was like, cool, these specs are pretty solid. Let me look into printers with similar specs and let me see if I can save money on things that he's doing with things that I'm doing, invested in a printer, started getting into the business, and then started manufacturing my own prints. Turns out doing that for 2 years gets you pretty good at making prints. And I was talking to my girlfriend, who's also an artist and has been selling alongside me these last 2 years. And I was like, I could probably start a business off this, because I've been offering to people for a while to do their prints, but very few people have taken me up on it. And turns out you just need to be better at marketing, and then go a little harder into figuring out options that can fit for multiple people. So I started researching ink types, paper types, different ways to manufacture, ship, how to do all these things for other people. And I mean, we're 2 months into it right now, and it's been surprisingly successful at not only getting me more connections with people around me. Like, I'm really good friends with a lot of older and more experienced business owners, but it's also gotten me great relationships with plenty of artists around me. And now I get to help do the thing that I love the most, which is just make being an artist accessible and make it as easy to jump into for people as they possibly can. We provide resources on events. We give shout outs to artists. We use our platform to, little as it is, build up the people around us, and then we carry our relationships equally in the products that we distribute. And we just help people get their products for affordable prices onto the market so that they can just price it at whatever and make a reasonable profit off the art that they create.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love that, man. Like, I told you privately, like, moving forward, I will probably be we'll be in business with each other for future printing projects. But
I mean, we'll do some testers. If you think I'm trash, be honest. That's all right. I need to improve. That's good.
People think you're trash?
No, people don't. But I gotta be humble about it. I know I got.
Oh, yeah. Well, look, man. Like, I was watching your stories and whatnot, and I mean, that was another thing that I immediately noticed too when we spoke. Is like you really went into this, like, especially like with the information, knowing the right ink and all that. Like when you were questioning us about, like, what ink we use, who were we going, like, just the necessary stuff. And
that was one incredible way to meet somebody, just grilling their idea about printing for like 30 minutes. That's
no, it's fine. It's good to know. And, like, I mean, look, right, this is before I knew that you already knew how to make prints, but if I'm being completely honest, I was speaking out of like the intent of, like, this might just be another artist just looking for another place to get their prints done. And in my honest opinion, Uptown has been doing a good job so far. Like, I mean, people are buying. So, like, if they were shitty prints, I imagine people wouldn't be buying them. That being said, though, but yeah, and I, talking about the community is great in that way. Very open to sharing information, ways to help elevate each other. Because I had a friend who's an artist on here, and they were pretty they had some strong opinions about when people are, let's say, just aspiring artists or aspiring creatives are coming up to you asking, like, what resources you used and this and that just to help them get their thing started. And me personally, hey, man, if I have the information that helped me get by, like, that's what I'll provide. But they were pretty reluctant to sharing that information. Was more like, hey, like, you got to figure it out kind of attitude. And, like, I didn't have anyone to refer to when I was getting my shit done. So, so I'm like, I mean, like, I get it, but isn't that kind of like gatekeeping in a way?
Fundamentally. It's
and and then that kind of just, like, I don't know, maybe because I watch UFC, but then I'm like thinking competitively, I'm like, you don't want this person to like end up making more sales than you, or just what?
Yeah.
That's just me coming up with my own bullshit. But it's just like,
Mhm.
people are asking for help. Fucking like lend them, why not help them out?
Exactly.
But
Like,
anyway, that's kind
yeah.
of where I was coming from when we first spoke, and
Mhm.
I'm like, this dude's asking some shit. And I'm like, I don't even know if I'm gonna be able to answer these questions because I'm just kind of like, here you go, and then I'll look at them, make sure they're good, and then that's it. I can just tell
Mhm.
you like what paper I use, and
Yeah.
pretty much is it. But no, I mean I mean, here we are now because you were so forward about like
Yeah.
knowing how we get our prints done, and here we
Mhm.
are on a podcast having a conversation.
Yeah, if you've got information, this is a lesson to all of you. You got to harass random people about it, and suddenly opportunities present themselves. Apparently,
And do it with a smile.
yeah, do it with a smile. Yeah,
You were very polite about it, so I wasn't
I,
gonna say no.
I was trying to be. That would have been quite a rude way to introduce myself.
Just like, hey, what
Hmm.
do you use for your prints?
Oh yeah, and then if you want to save yourself at the end, buy a print. That's how you get them.
Yeah. No, but so how would you describe like a typical day to day, if that's
Yeah,
possible? Because
yeah,
everybody's days
absolutely.
are.
So basically, what I was doing with ABA, I was working sort of in the in-home setting for a while. So most of ABA is done in-home. It's like functionally hiring a therapist to come do therapy for you for 3 hours at your house with your kid. And that's what I was doing. And the way that my company has it structured is if you're a full-time employee like I was, you get off at 7 o'clock. My girlfriend, who's co-owner of Frog and Mantis, is also working for them, and she's still on that full-time basis, so she only gets off at 7 p.m. Um, at the same time, conveniently, as we started Frog and Mantis, they were opening up a clinic side to the company, which is clinic in office version of the same thing. But instead of 3 hours, it was a 6 hour functional daycare setting, which was helping kids from the ages of 2 to 6 transition into being able to go to like early preschool, elementary school, those types of things, because commonly in autistic situations, they have very, very difficult transitions into environments like that, especially away from their parents.
Mm-hmm.
So my company, really, really great about that. And they opened up the clinic. The difference was that the clinic is a part-time position that works from 8:45 to 3:15, which most people didn't want to transition to. I, on the other hand, that's perfect. That I'm starting a new company at the same time. That means I get off in the afternoon. So now my schedule, as of the last 2 weeks and going on 3 in a day or so, has been wake up at like 7:30, 8 o'clock, somewhere in there, be at work by 8:45, work until 3:15, and then schedule all of my art stuff as well as all the manufacturing stuff from 3:30, 4 o'clock, all the way through however long until I get bored of it for the day. Sometimes 10 p.m., sometimes I'm cranking until 11:30. But it's a matter of running the business for me for the latter half of the day. Like before this, I had a consultation with an artist about doing prints. So we met at a coffee shop and talked about all of our stuff. That was scheduled in this time. I've got more coming up. And then just doing the manufacturing stuff. And if I don't have manufacturing things to do, working on my own art. Just continuing to build it up, because you have to be in, I mean, for lack of a better term, in that grind set when you're building a business. And it's the thing I love. Like I really enjoy it. The through line with all the things that I've done are people. From working at Target, having conversations with like people in their 80s about death, to going to coffee shops, having political discussions, working with artists and discussing the things that they like, working with kids and teaching them how to swim, working with autistic children, helping them develop rudimentary ideas as to how worlds around them function. Everything is people oriented, and that's my favorite thing. I described this earlier to another guy that I was talking to, but I genuinely feel as if everyone has at least something that my cat is screaming.
I I was gonna ask if you need to let your cat out, you can do
No,
that.
I'll let him in. Let
Or
me
let
grab
him in. Okay, he's
Mm.
trying to get in. Oh, that's so cute.
Come on in.
Aw.
I hear you arguing.
I have a cat in my office with me, and I'm waiting for him to want to
There
get
he
out.
is.
Oh,
Hi,
oh,
Gingy.
wow.
A little hairless guy.
Like Lord Beerus from.
I got that yesterday. Lord Beerus. Yeah, I know. But I was talking to this guy about this, and he was asking me about it, and I said that I feel as if everyone has at least something that is a skill they're better at than other skills. And if you format your purpose or things that you enjoy doing around that skill, not only will it be easier, but it'll be more enjoyable so long as you enjoy that skill. And I could speak decently, and I really like retaining information. Hi. So I feel like I'm good at and can continue being good at educating in some degree. And if I can do that in any conversation that I'm in, learn from the people that I'm talking to, and then use that as more information to educate more people with along the way, then I'm going to continue doing that. And that's the through line with all of them. Teaching severely autistic children and talking to old people and talking to everyone in between about all sorts of different things with no discrimination in any regard.
Hey, man, I mean, if that's like what you enjoy doing, that's, it really matters, and it doesn't feel like work, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. Like, I love having just fully engaged conversations with people, strangers, especially. I mean, that's like one of the best things about doing these events, the markets. Although, and we'll bring I'm going to be bringing it up that the saturation of markets because that's definitely a thing. But
It's getting there.
it's like, but it's still a positive experience, especially for artists that really like do need that connection. Like I don't know about you, but when I do network with other artists and the topic of perhaps podcasting or just whatever, but always just the topic of connecting with people, like they really start lighting up when they talk about it because like we need that human interaction. So
yeah,
so like that being a big part of your job and what your like your career, however you want to title it, like that's awesome, and it definitely makes it easier. um how many how what would you say, like a majority of your clients, are they all within your area, or are they in the city in Richmond, or is it all spread out?
So right now it's mostly within Fredericksburg because
Okay.
pretty much every city has a good amount of tattoo artists,
Mhm.
and we've gone to a few tattoo places so far, and we're starting to build up clientele through that because they're always doing events and they always need art, which really easy. That's good business for us. But we've also gotten a good bit of business out of Culpeper because they have this one art studio that we now know about because of the event that I met you at, and building off of that, we're starting to get more people out of there. We have a few people who are talking to us through Richmond, and it's starting to expand. I like to say that this 50-mile radius around Fredericksburg, this like 2 hours up, south, east, and west, and that's our market because it's difficult for a dude in like Minneapolis to be like, oh yeah, let's go get prints from this dude in Virginia who doesn't have a website yet. It's going to be homebrew for a while.
Right, right. I mean, yeah, I mean that's how, if many, if not all, starters, like that's how it all begins anyway. So, but
Got to
that's
keep
cool.
your
Like,
scope small.
yeah, exactly,
Oh yeah.
exactly. Do you so after establishing how much you love doing this, is there any concern in terms of like having the time and or both the energy to produce, like to create your own art?
So I've always been slow to produce art anyway. That's part of where the printing idea came from, because offering a service is significantly more consistent for making money than offering art when I only produce one thing every like 2 or 3 months.
Okay.
And I recently had a commission for this album cover that I loved, and doing that album cover helped me figure out a lot of where I want my style to go. And because it takes me so long to produce it, I was like, probably a little better if I start going the fine art route, have very few pieces, put unbelievable amounts of time into all of them, and then continue to get increasingly better at doing those massive pieces so I can market them to the few people who are willing to buy them, and then have a company that markets to tons of people to generate income that way. So I may not have as much time for art as I'd otherwise want, but I've yet to find a time so far where like I'd rather have the lust to continue doing art than ever be in a position where I have too much time to do it and I start hating it. So if I have to keep pushing it off, that means that I'm going to keep wanting to go back to it. And I work a lot better when I'm in situations where I have to beat this to-do list before I get to the thing I want to do, rather than having the to-do list be completely empty.
Okay.
So that's how I'm working with it. I'm closing this door again if you're going to start hitting that ball around. It sounds like gunshots.
Yeah, just to clarify for just the listeners, he's talking to his cat.
Yeah.
His cat was bugging out trying to get in, and
oh, I did the new Rogan guest thing of just like describing a picture as I'm looking at it. That's I've seen too many podcasts to make that mistake. This is an issue.
Nah, it's all good. It's all good. So before I mention the market scene, because I will say the general consensus with a lot of vendors is that it is pretty saturated.
Yeah.
So like, what are do you have any thoughts or opinions on that?
I do. I think it really depends on how individual events are marketed. It's especially with regard to the style that someone is going for. I think the best way to sell art is in some form of exclusivity compared to the relative competitor that you're going with. I'm gonna have to take that from him in a minute. The ball from my cat. But if you're like, let's say Richmond has tons of events constantly. I see you posting your schedule. I don't know how you find all of them.
Dude, if you think that is in any way impressive or whatever, there are like the regular vendors have like double that sometimes.
Yeah.
Or at least in a scene.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of like I still consider myself fresh on the scene. But a lot of what I'm starting to realize, a lot of people that really do this like full time, they're booking 2, if not 3 events a weekend if they can.
Exactly.
Like, this has been the most active I've been this year. Just doing like every weekend. I'm trying to ease into doing a couple, events a weekend, but it is exhausting. I'm fortunate to have help. But yeah, man, like there are people that are really hustling, and it makes me feel like, fuck, I need to.
Oh yeah, I think the issue of abundance only comes if you're sticking to one small area, because then you become like a regular to the people that are going to these events. It's like you're gonna get very few outsiders coming into well, maybe not very few. Richmond's huge, but like even then, if like you're doing a Richmond event, at like 60-70% of the people there are going to be Richmond residents. And that's going to go for most of Richmond's events. So you're going to be seeing a lot of similar faces, and a lot of people are going to be seeing a lot of similar art.
Yeah, it's almost like having a storefront at that
Exactly.
point. It's like if you're coming every time I'm out there, I might as well have a storefront.
Exactly.
Which of course is expensive, but
that's
how regular these things are. And I say it all the time. Like there's at least 4 events happening at once on a Saturday. It's pretty crazy.
The benefit of the storefront is that it's much more accessible to readily swap up what you're doing, and you can sell a lot more variety of things without it seeming inappropriate. Like our whole goal with Frog and Mantis is to have a place to manufacture out of, which printing doesn't require a big place, and then in the front of it have a gallery, and in addition to the gallery stuff, have like a lot of really interesting things that you can purchase that have nothing to do with, well, not nothing to do, have aren't the art themselves, like exotic art manufacturing stuff, like unique paintbrushes, fountain pens, different types of inks, those types of things. And then you can continue to vary that up as new art cycles come in. And when you're a storefront, you're stuck in one location where people can regularly expect to go there and hope for a refresh of new and interesting items. Whereas with a vending spot, you're kind of like a blurry color, and they keep seeing the same color over and over again, where even if you keep swapping your art, the amount of expenses that you'd have to put in to dramatically change your setup to attract new visitors is both unreliable and unfeasible to the regular artist. So then you end up setting up the exact same way. You go and you see very similar faces, and they go and they're like, yeah, I know, I don't want to buy that. And then you end up burning yourself out of the specific environments where you're just going to kill your market in Richmond, where it doesn't seem as if shops have that same issue. But if you have the saturation, and the saturation is across the whole state, driving 2 hours west is pretty much like meeting a whole new group of people and accessing a completely unique market that has never touched anything that you've ever created. And if you do it in that way, you can really maximize the amount that you can make off of your art, but it's going to cost you significantly more, both in time and psychological bandwidth. And it's the balance there. It's, if you want to make the most money, you got to do like an East Coast circuit, do like 2-3 events per state, and then keep blasting your way up north or south. But that's hell. That's genuinely awful. But that's how you make the money. So
I don't see myself like I'm part of this like vendors collective. And I mean, it's cool because you see a lot of the like other opportunity, but then I'm seeing more events that are like happening in DC and like stuff a little outside of Virginia, and seeing a lot of vendors that do like traveling shows, I guess you could call it, or you know, I don't know if I'm gonna get myself to that point. I don't know, because that just I don't know. That's like definitely unknown territory for me. But people ask me if I'm like going to Washington for this or whatever. I'm like, honestly, I'm just staying here. Like, you know, we do events in Charlottesville. That's like as far as we travel as of right now. Like I haven't tried Norfolk yet or anywhere else, but like I'm just staying in Virginia. I can't imagine like it's pretty.
Driving up to New York.
Yeah, it's oh yeah, and fuck that. Yeah, I'm you know, I saw someone that went to, I think they actually went to New York for some convention. It was like an anime type of a convention. I'm just like, man, like I mean, they have and that's the thing, like who knows if they, you know, made everything back and profit and all that. I would hope so. But man, that just stresses me the fuck out because
it drain you. Exactly.
It's emotionally, mentally, and financially draining, and you just hope for the best that you can at least make that back.
The way that I like to look at all of these different things is you got to think about the economic situation that you want to be in, and think about what the end goal of your current process is going to look like to get to that economic position. And with vending at specific events, the best way to do it is doing that massive, like genuine road trip so you can access new markets regularly while also having quite a variety of price points, having a recognizable brand, and being somehow sexy enough to attract so many different unique individuals that can at least drop like a $3 sticker purchase. And that sounds like such a bitch to get right that I don't want to ever go deep into doing that. The alternative is social media, in which case you have to get huge on social media, be able to market to exactly the right type of people, and then sell on either websites that are going to help you with shipping, manufacture your prints for you, or ship it all individually yourself. and that sounds like a different kind of bitch, but still a bitch.
Yeah.
And it's both of those games sound so annoying to get good at that I mean, I took the alternative route. I started a company. So it's one of those things where that's the other way to get decent at art is you own a place that is able to distribute art and somehow make enough money back. The most popular way being a local gallery, which the majority of time you'll see people purchase a location, put a fat mortgage down on it, or put a fat down payment over a mortgage, get decent interest rates, and then they charge rent for wall space. And 9 times out of 10, if you're paying that rent for wall space, it's going to be very damn difficult to pay that rent back, just in sales alone.
Yeah.
But the person who owns the place is making money,
Yeah.
so that's fine. And then you get some of the less ethical ones, which they charge rent space or studio space, as well as like a 30% hike on every sale that you make because they're going through their processing thing and they're the ones attracting customers into the location. You get some of the really egregious ones that have a rent space and 50% of sales that go out. And it's a weird mess that being the alternative, the local art exploitative technique of basically making your living off of other people trying to be artists is a really fascinating thing. And it's the one that definitely toes the line of ethical legitimacy the closest, because you'll definitely figure out numbers that other people are going to hate and you'll figure out numbers that other people are going to love. And that's the avenue that I'm going as an artist, to try and make my living off of other artists trying to make their living. But I'm trying to do it in the most ethical way possible because I know what that fucking grind looks like, and it's gross. And if you want to do it, by all means, go for it. It's great. I can help you get there to the extent that I'm physically able through information and helping you with marketing and all of these other things. But I'm staying put as much as I'm going to go through with. And hopefully I can use a platform to both make a living for myself and help others make a little bit easier of a living themselves, as easy as art can be to make a living.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of us are trying to do that in our own way.
There is the fourth option of getting signed, but depends on where you're at. Depends on what you do.
Yeah.
There's a guy out of Wild Lines in Culpeper that just got signed on to Marvel that I massively envy. And he got signed on a trading card deal, and then if he sticks those 100, 200 trading cards, then he can move on to working on comics. But he's also like either late 30s or early 40s. I haven't asked yet. And this is the decades of work that he's put into not only being damn good at art, but building the connections to be able to get an offer from Marvel. And
what's his name? If
his name is David Willingham. Let me double check that. I'll send it to you so you could link it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, comic books. Yeah, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, David Willingham. I got it.
David Williams. Okay, I have to check him out. Yeah, listen. I have I have a friend that I met in New Jersey, and then come to find out he's here in Richmond, and I've yet to come cross paths with him. His name is Nick Justice, and he's he does like the whole artist alley thing, and does all the local comic book conventions and whatnot. Very talented, very skillful, really good with Copics. But yeah, people often will ask me, because like they would see my pop art, fan art stuff, that if I would consider doing comics. And at one point I wanted to pursue it, but I don't know. The more, I mean, I'll admit I was kind of lazy about it too, and probably had like no self-confidence, because we're talking Marvel here. So it just like the more it started feeling difficult to me, the more I started honing into my own craft, which I'm
which is damn good anyway.
Well, thank you. But
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
much more happy, like not anyway, that's besides the point. It's
yeah.
just that's such a common thing when people see my work because like I come from an animation background and
Hmm.
just growing up on comics too is just
Oh, yeah.
my style that kind of going back to sort of imitating like we imitate what we
Hmm.
admired and grew up on. So um but
Making money off animation must be such a bitch.
I mean, and look, right? Because I'm kind of up there. I'm probably like around almost the same age as the artists you're talking about.
Ugh.
Yeah, when I was getting my degree in animation, I mean, this was when Flash was really blowing up.
Hmm.
3D was, animation was really starting to
Yeah.
escalate. Um, but now it's just like I don't even know. Like it was kind of hard for me in general to keep up with the softwares too, especially if we're talking like the subscriptions and stuff. Like my
Hmm.
shit was pirated until it was like obsolete. Once it became
Yeah.
obsolete, I was like, well. But also like it's animation is it's so competitive. Like I mentioned my
Hmm.
oldest brother, he's an animator. He's actually he's a special effects animator, I
Oh,
believe is
wow.
the title. So he's worked on like a lot of major game titles,
Yeah.
worked on television and like a couple movies back in the day. Um, but he was actually on the podcast and
Hmm.
like he's pretty jaded from
Yeah.
the industry when you're in it for so long too.
Hard not
Like
to be.
he's been in it since fucking like he just turned 50. So he's been in it for a very long time. So like when he was on the podcast and it was a two-parter, but it was kind of like not dark, but he was kind of
Hmm.
like really sharing like how harsh it could be when trying to apply for a studio and like
Oh,
getting
yeah.
interviews and stuff. So it was kind of like he wasn't trying to scare away anybody, but at the same time was like really just laying down like the real shit. Which I mean I do appreciate, and it kind of made me feel better about my choices.
Hmm.
Um, but I kind of forgot where I was going with that. But anyway, we'll switch to generative AI because
Oh, wonderful.
I'm very interested poking your brain about that topic.
Yeah. I mean, do you have a specific question?
Um, well, like I know some people have very strict opinions, like it's either fuck AI or just kind of it's fun to mess around with casually. So like, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously the artists are the one that are like, well, I mean, it's still kind of split with artists, but for me, I know more artists that are more like fuck you AI than like trying to look at some of the more like
Hmm.
other positive benefits of AI. So,
I mean, where do you sit with that regard?
I mean, I'm kind of in the middle. I am worried in terms of when we're speaking like AI art, like
Hmm.
paintings and illustrations and stuff, music, like entertainment, like all that stuff, I actually kind of am concerned about because of course it's yeah, it's risking a lot of jobs now.
Yes, it is.
Um and yeah, there's a lot of controversy around it, but
Hmm.
I'm also kind of like sort of aware, like I've seen articles pop up here and there of like how they're developing sort of like safety guards for these things. Like I know they
Yeah.
got it for like literature, like they have ways to detect when a paper is written by AI
Yeah.
art. I think it was I did a thing about like Adobe a book author was getting sued for their cover art because that was AI art, and
Interesting.
I think they found like a partial signature from amongst the millions of data that
Yeah.
collected to make that thing, and it just happened to grab like a part of a signature, and I was like, that's pretty funny actually, because
It is really funny.
um I mean, I still have hope. Like I know, like we're still very much in the thick of it, and there will be probably
Yes.
more precautions on how to be like to make sure like shit's still authentic. Like I've been meaning to do like a solo episode covering some of these things, but I know there's been announcements of I mean, I'm gonna get the specifics wrong, but they just kind of made it a thing that like you can't copyright AI art, because
Hmm.
it's not man-made. So that's a thing now, and I know there
That's
was
an interesting development.
yeah, and there was an artist that was mentioned like in the beginning of this AI art thing, like he won a gallery like a competition
Hmm.
for a gallery, and it's very controversial because he used AI art, but now it looks like shit. I don't have the article in front of me right now, but there was like his name was being brought up again because like I don't know if it's like just saying like he can't copyright that shit even though he won, or they might be retracting, you know,
Mm.
whatever. But like he was coming up again because like it's very, it's just such a controversial thing. But
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
I'm kind of like in the middle. Like I don't, I have said this a bunch of times on the podcast. So like for like returning listeners and watchers, if you heard this before, I apologize. But my
Mm.
place is I would use like what is it? Dolly, I think is one of
Mm.
the like illustration ones. I would use Dolly if I needed visual references for an idea because like um I know like I like to do this thing with fan art where I like to do mashup characters, right?
Yes.
I mean, I mean, you see it all the
Yeah, I've
time.
seen your work. Yeah.
Yeah, so like, you know, I used to just Google like, oh, has this been done before? I would just type in two names
Hmm.
that I want to collaborate, and if I didn't see enough results, then I'd be like, all right, I'm gonna try at it. So I would think, because I don't have any of these AI softwares, but if I was gonna use it as a tool, I would use it as a reference tool. Be like, what
Yeah.
would it look like? Sort of like, what are my options to try to use as a reference or to stay away from, right? It's like, oh, I'm
Hmm.
seeing a bunch of this, I'm going to stay away from that
Yeah.
area. And
Create something new.
yeah, exactly. So like that's how I would use that as a tool. But to actually use AI art and try to sell it as that, because I've heard people have tried doing that and they got flagged. um,
Hmm.
but I would not do that. That's where I cross the line. I would never
Yes.
create AI art with Dolly or Mid Journey or whatever and try to sell it as a print or whatever. Like that's
Hmm.
that's a no-no for me. So again, because like I know it could definitely save time if you're making like variants
Oh
of
yeah.
print or something, right? I mean, I've tried doing that myself where I'm just like changing the color palette on certain digital pieces, but I mean, I get the time saver thing, but that, morally, like I would just use it for reference and that's it, and never try to
Yeah.
sell it as any, the references themselves.
Hmm.
But yeah, sorry, that was a very long.
No, no,
Uh,
it's good to piece together. Um, so to go into my like, I have my personal views and then I have my like pragmatic stuff. And
okay.
I think my pragmatic stuff is significantly more interesting than my personal views, but I think that about every pragmatic view I have. So it's I'll go into my personal first because it's simpler. But my personal is more or less a fuck AI opinion. Um, Not because I'm like, well, it's influenced by the pragmatic, but my actions, so my personal view will always be avoiding it. I'm never going to use AI. I'm not going to sell anything that is AI. I don't use it for reference material. And in all honesty, I think my style is fairly safe from AI, considering that whatever keywords you'd have to put in to generate something in my style would probably be pretty lackluster and difficult to figure out anyway. So I don't, it's in my brain, it's far away from me, and I wish to keep it that way. Then we get the pragmatic shit because I run a company where I'm probably going to have somebody come through that wants to make prints out of AI stuff that they've made. So I'm going to have to confront this directly at some point.
Mm,
Um, I don't see any moral issue with it, but I don't see any moral issue with it in the same way that I don't see any moral issue with someone using a drill as opposed to a screwdriver.
mm,
In reference to plagiarization, that's an issue regardless of AI. You can be a plagiarist separate from AI. AI, like any other good tool that is advancing a medium, is going to allow for you fucking other people over to be way easier. Like, every single person who started adopting the drill is going to put everyone who's doing handheld screwdrivers out of business. That's just part of it. While that isn't a completely 100% accurate analogy, I don't think it's right of me to condemn those who choose to use a new tool that I disagree with. It's a tool. And what I think the effect of that tool is going to be is the death of that fourth option that we talked about a minute ago. I don't think it's going to be very viable for people to get jobs in industries like Marvel anymore if I can just plug in new Venom archetype on Spider-Man and suddenly generate 50 playing cards that I can sell. I think that career path is going to die. And I think AI is fundamentally globalization's answer to that medium, that field. It's, how can I generate something as fast as possible for as cheap as possible to distribute to as many as possible? Well, I make a tool to do it for me. And that's what that tool is.
Yeah.
The effect that is probably going to have, or at least the effect that I hope it has, is over the next 50 years, we're going to get so unbelievably sick and tired of not being able to generate these things on our own that while everything else is massively global in its scale, and we try to put ourselves in a position of being like a leader of the entire country as opposed to a leader of our single city, I feel tools like AI generation, as well as things like social media and the fundamental dynamic of how politics works, and many of these other tools that connect many, many people on a broader scale, are going to kick us back into the desire to want to be small and tight-knit and separate ourselves from the disgusting nature of connecting ourselves to something our brains can't fully comprehend. And that's where I feel it's going to go to. I think AI is going to become a massive staple, and Walmart is going to be like one of those things where, yeah, I'm going in there to see corporate manufactured products made in countries I can't pronounce by people I'll never meet for prices that I'd consider immoral if I thought about for more than 5 minutes, as well as all the death of the artists by the art that's generated here. But then I get to go into downtown of my city, and I get to meet 500, if even that, artists that don't like this thing, and generate their own stuff from their brain using the same type of brain that I have. And that's lingered with me for a while with regards to all AI. I'm forgetting the exact name of the dude who I was listening to, but there's a brilliant mathematician who's talked about this for a while. And one of the jokes that he's continuously made is that AI is going to babysit the entire world by putting us in this fucking Simpsons bubble where we can have all of our human pleasantries and all of our nonsense while AI can run everything else on the outside. And I feel like that's probably pretty close to accurate. I don't see us creating regulation that is going to be effective at stopping the development of AI, both in the sense of creating literal artificial intelligence and creating just tool artificial intelligences. And I don't think it's going to be possible to stop that development. As Rogan so often quotes, humans are the caterpillar that leads to the mechanical butterfly.
Yep.
I don't think you can stop the metamorphosis. It's inevitable. But the hope is that either we scare ourselves so wholeheartedly that we jump back into the conservatism that we so desperately want to avoid in younger age.
Yeah.
Or we let the robots do it for us. And that's the backbone of my opinions here. Is most of it is going to come down to, I really, really fucking appreciate what I am as a human. A human is an incredibly flawed, ineffective tool at doing most of the shit that it thinks it's good at doing. And that's okay, because we can do it together. And the social aspect of it is what makes us such a fascinating and unique animal. That's the brunt of it, is embracing our flaws and embracing the bullshit that we continuously put ourselves through and develop through over an increasingly long and seemingly dark hole of time, and then hopefully jumping back to the part that makes us joyous while maybe altering the world for the worse or potentially better in the meantime.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, I don't know if it's going to happen in my time with the generative AI stuff. I don't know if I'm going to get assassinated by a Terminator at some point. I don't know if my computer is going to do some nonsense. It's all a black hole of information and skepticism that is built off the back of both fear and excitement.
Yeah.
And while I don't personally embrace it because I feel like it separates us from what I personally idealize as humanity, I don't condemn those who do, because ultimately it's created by humanity, which in some regard makes me a bit of a hypocrite. So it's a fun balance to strike.
It's
but yeah, like, fuck AI.
It's right, yeah, fuck AI. Mm-hmm. But in a way, it's like kind of like full circle, yeah, because like man created AI. Now AI's created something. Well, not man, but something that man, like mankind needs. It's like it's weird. It's like just like this odd kind of off cycle.
Yeah.
But I agree. Like, I too am hopeful that society will kind of like, kind of like, oh, what's the word? I'm bad at words often, but kind of like come to their senses and start again, like appreciating the capabilities that we do as people, the things that we can accomplish, even when the odds are against us, right? There's a lot of like crazy like anomalies out there that are, able to pursue amazing things that like an average person wouldn't, like there's what's his name? It's like Zion or something. He's got no legs, but he's like,
I know him. Yeah, I know Zion.
Dude's a beast, but you know what? Like he's one of them, and it'd be hard to not be able to appreciate like that human spirit, that soul,
exactly,
that thing that fucking makes him like this beast, Yeah, like AI can't do that as of right now. I just I kind of hope that we sort of like when I talk to other artists, we always say like hopefully like the true art lovers, the ones that love the late like what goes into the artwork, that really do enjoy, all of that, all the physicalities of it, like just having it in your hands and whatnot, that they will still be around and still, appreciate and respect the arts and like, keep that alive. Like if, like it'd be amazing if they can just coexist, honestly. Right.
I don't think we'll have a choice.
Well, no, right. Yeah. Well, I mean, like, because I think like everyone's just is just thinking like it's just going to be a complete takeover, where I'm thinking maybe there might be a point where maybe it will take over, and then kind of like you were saying, like it might, the fucking, what do they say? The pendulum always swings back, right? So maybe that'll be it, kind of like how vinyl has made a comeback. People love collecting VHS tapes, cassette tapes, like stuff like that. So like, maybe, actual physical art will be the next vintage item.
Yeah. I mean, I think the two options that are going to happen is either the death of fundamental intelligence, or the appreciation for the handmade good, because it's like both of these are coming off of the same thing, and it's the fact that we've put ourselves in a position where, as a society and more or less as a world, we commodify cheap, and we try our very, very hardest to make things for cheaper and quicker. And I mean, we could go into a conversation for hours about like just Monsanto and the manufacturing of the pesticide that no longer works effectively, or the increase in monocrop agriculture, the development of AI as a fundamental tool, the massive overstimulation of pharmaceuticals in respect to trying to solve all of the world's issues while at the same time disincentivize fundamental healthiness. It's a mess of all of us trying to figure out the quickest, easiest, and most cost-effective solution while saving ourselves the most time in every single issue that we have. And the problem of that is you run into the issues of realizing that nothing comes without cost.
Yeah.
Even if the cost isn't monetary, the cost will be physical. If it's not physical, it'll be psychological. If it's not psychological, it'll be societal. If it's not societal, it'll be moral. And it will continue to go down its own rabbit hole from then and develop itself into this big pile of what the fuck does all of this mean?
Yeah.
And what you get out of that is either the rollback or you get the death of intelligence. Those would be the final points, is we either lose ourselves in the commodity or we save ourselves and jump back to what is meaningful.
Yeah.
And I don't know how long that timeline is, but that timeline's horrifying regardless of its length.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of what happens sooner, I suppose. Maybe both will happen. Who knows?
Well, yeah, I mean, there are like intellectuals that even say, you know, like something that, I mean, it might not happen for a long time, but it's like, hey, like one of the things that we probably may have to worry about is like just like us like killing ourselves with the AI because of, you know, I mean, once it's weaponized, like that's it, man. You know, once you got like AI, like driven missiles and weaponry and shit, like, you know, drones and all that. Like so like, I mean, if we can survive, if life gets to that point and we can survive that, then like, yeah, maybe there'll be a chance we can kind of like dial it down and be like, all right, we need to rethink this and try to get some control.
As joked about as the plot of Terminator is, the plot is, it starts off of them creating an AI that identifies issues with the world. It accidentally fires a missile at something. Its creators try to turn it off, and then it deems its creators an enemy because they're trying to turn it off.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's not even like a conscious entity. It is just the code that they wrote behaving as if it would when it perceives an enemy as a terror. That's it.
Yeah.
They built it to stop terrorism and then tried to shut it off, so it perceived it as terrorists, and then the entire plot kicks off. That's a perfectly feasible line of code to see happening.
Yeah.
And that's the fucking irony of it, is we nickname it the Terminator nonsense, and the whole AI conjunction is like, we're not going to Terminator ourselves. But the whole fucking plot of that movie, while technically bombastic and insane, comes from a very logical situation that is very, very easy to fuck up and do ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's the issue.
Yeah.
It's
so funny. It's
reality,
funny, but it's like, damn.
Yeah, I just got to go to my local coffee shop and just not think about it.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah,
it's like,
embrace.
Time to go on about my day now.
Oh yeah.
How are you on time? Because I did want to get into some MMA talk with you.
I'm good. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
If you want to go into MMA, I was trying to hold it off. I've been oozing. It's itching at the seams to talk about this shit.
Well, you know, I want to be respectful. You know, I wanted to try to help give your art and your Frog and Mantis company some spotlight to help market it the best way I can. So I hope I did. Oh
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a pleasure to be on. This is my first podcast, and I'm having a fucking blast.
Okay, awesome. I
wanted to hold off the MMA though, because we're gonna alienate half the, if not more, of the people that listen to this. This is just for us.
I sense maybe a future for a podcast.
Maybe
podcast in the future.
For chance.
You definitely sound like. I mean, that's the impression I'm getting, because I mean, the way you articulate is much better than I ever could. I mean, you know what? I will. I mean, I think is it safe to say that I think a part of that attributes to training in at least one of the.
Yeah, I study the shit out of
martial arts. I mean,
yep. I also listen to a ton of it too. So it's like I know you listen to the press conferences because you've referenced it, but like I listen to the press conferences. I also listen to like 4 different analysts that all have different opinions, and like my drive to work every day is some MMA related podcast or some other podcast that's super informational. But MMA is always a part of it. And yeah, training is great.
So yeah, right. And who do you like to listen to when it comes to?
Jack Slack is the best.
Okay, I think
By
I
far.
recognize that. You don't like
Jack's.
I tend to listen to the Weighing In podcast.
Yeah, that one's not bad. I listened to.
I know there's a bunch of other good ones, but
oh yeah,
it just
Jack Slack is just an incredible analyst.
Okay.
Like unbelievably good analyst. I mean,
do you like Luke Thomas?
No, Luke Thomas is okay. He's got some weird takes sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Luke Thomas is all right. Jack Slack is my top tier. Who else is out there? Yeah, most of it comes off the back of Jack Slack because he writes about it and so for reference, Luke Thomas is involved in MMA at a deeper level than just being an analyst. So are most of these other guys. Like I listen to Robert Whitaker's podcast too because he has interesting insights. I listen to El Segundo, which is Craig Jones's podcast, and a few other people who are actively fighters. Jack Slack just trains. His whole career is based off of getting signed to Bloody Elbow early on and a few other things as a writer and becoming so good as an analytical writer for striking that he was able to bag a position where he became the writer for Conor McGregor's biography.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Notorious is written by him, and I didn't know that until like fairly recently. So he wrote that, started his own website called Fight Primer, where he writes detailed articles about in-depth analyses of these fights with graphics, and he reads them out. And then he started a podcast called the Fights Gone By podcast, where he just went over the fights in kind of a goofy way. Then he changed it to the Jack Slack podcast, and he basically for like 40 minutes to an hour goes through the fights that happen once a week and in as detailed a way as possible just describe shit that he catches. Like I didn't catch the Sean Strickland holding two hands thing and teeping to the body in the most stupid way possible. Jack caught that. And every other person that I've listened to didn't mention teeping as a factor for Sean Strickland to beat Israel ever. Fucking the Weasel, who's probably one of the most popular right now, didn't mention it. Luke Thomas didn't mention it. Robert Whitaker didn't mention it, and he's in the fucking division. Nobody mentioned teep kicks. Everyone was just talking about defensively sound boxing, and everyone was talking about how well he applied his defensive boxing to cut off the ring against Adesanya. Jack went into the teeps. Jack went into the weird hand fighting things that he was doing, and Jack went into all sorts of different circling things because he's just he takes the obsessiveness I have over being able to articulate in detail these things that we talk about to an unbelievable level, being like scholarly about this stuff. It's like listening to John Danaher talk about grappling. He's just so knowledgeable about all of the subjects, and he points out so many interesting things that it's hard not to embrace it. Right. But then I listen to like El Segundo and occasionally Luke Thomas, occasionally Robert Whitaker. I listen to the Weasel when he does his breakdowns. I listen to Ariel Helwani, even though he doesn't do breakdowns. He just dissects a lot of those parts of the fight, and then I listen to other fighters talk about each other. Yeah, so it's interesting. I listen to some coaches, but Slacky J, he's just I can't talk good enough about him because he's upped my grappling game just by listening to how he talks about grappling, which is hilarious because he started as a striking analyst and then built it up into MMA. And he makes all of his money. He makes like $180,000 a year off of Patreon alone, dropping 2 podcasts a week, one where he talks on YouTube about the fights, and then one where he elaborates on fights as they're coming up for $5 a month on Patreon.
Oh my God.
And it's the best Patreon subscription model I've ever seen. You just do 2 podcasts a week and you write articles. You make 1 podcast free, 1 paid, and then the articles are paid. And all you charge people is $5. It's insane.
Wow. Damn.
He makes almost $200,000 a year off of it. And no one knows what he looks like or what his name is or any of this stuff. It's just a pen name.
Oh, wow. Damn.
Yeah, he's that good.
But I guess he's
that's
like Banksy of I don't know.
he is. Yeah, he's the
Like, you don't
Banksy
know
of
what he
MMA.
looks like, but
Nope.
he's putting out gems. That's what's up.
That's perfect right there, the Banksy. If we end this on me shouting out about the podcast,
I was gonna say
I find that
I
hilarious.
appreciate the time, and
Oh yeah, I appreciate you.
I will admit, because it does sometimes drag to 2 hours or more with certain guests, depending like how good and how the flow is going. And it's in my honest opinion, it's hard for me to keep these conversations in like 60 minutes is really hard. 60 minutes goes by really fast. So I always thought like 90 minutes was like not so scared, like intimidating duration for like people who are not privy to podcasting.
Exactly.
But like honestly, it can easily get to 2 hours or more just because like it's always a good hang in my opinion. So
yeah.
I hope you had a good time.
I'll be back if you'll have me. That's
Absolutely, man. You're always welcome back.
Yeah, I'd love to be.
Yeah, if you need to promote something for your business. As a matter of fact, is there anything you'd like to plug for our audience?
I mean, for anybody listening, I run Frag and Mantis. I know he'll link this so you guys have easy access. But if you just want affordable art prints and you want to actually have someone you can talk to about getting your prints done well, that's what I do. That's our whole thing. We do all the packaging for prints, trim work. We offer multiple paper types with archival qualities and all those others. I mean, it's a fun time. If you need prints, check me out. That's really all I care about. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, yeah, if you've been tuning into this podcast, I think you could tell it's very evident that he knows what he's talking about. He's definitely done the research. He's very much into finding information. So, like I said in the beginning too, like moving forward, I'm sure we'll be doing some business. I'll be coming to you for some work as well. So I look.
We'll be promoting you. I mean, tomorrow we're gonna have that big artist feature review.
That's right. I didn't want
that all signed up. I mean, if you want to stop by just to support him, that's perfectly doable as well.
Yeah. Either way, definitely check out the print company. Also check out his artwork too at oh geez, I forgot how do you say it? I don't want to butcher it.
In almost 3 hours, Yakoaton. YAKOOAYTON.
There you go, folks.
Yakoaton.
Thank you again, Kody. Thank you for everyone who joined us on this podcast. Very much like it's art and then MMA. I love it. Yeah. But yeah, for everyone tuning in, please stay safe, stay healthy, and of course, stay driven. And we shall catch you on the next one. Peace out, everybody. And thank you again, Kody.